Hi, this is Andrea Gin, and I'm the producer and one of the hosts of Pop This. I'm just here to let you know that we are taking a break this week, and in lieu of a new episode, have gone into the archives and pulled up an old favorite for you to hear. Today, we are revisiting our episode on Mina Shum's landmark film, Double Happiness, to celebrate its 30th anniversary. The film is not only the first feature to be directed by a Chinese-Canadian woman to be given wide release, but it also launched the great Sandra Oh into our collective consciousness, for which we'll always be grateful. For those of us in Vancouver, Double Happiness will be screened on April 17th for National Canadian Film Day. There will be a Q&A with writer-director Mina Shum, and it's all happening at the VIF Center. It's a free event, but you still have to reserve tickets. You can go to vif.org to find out more info. In the meantime, enjoy our chat about this incredible film. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Pop This, the podcast where two women talk about everything pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen and Andrea Warner.
You all know that I love gossip columns. I mean, if anyone has any. Yeah, I know, right? It's so weird. And I have to say, though, I'm drawing the line on one current gossip story that I find has crossed the line. I'm drawing a line because they crossed the line.
Okay.
And I don't really care if Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston get back together. And I think it's gross.
Are you talking about the handhold? Like
yes,
the hand grip?
They met up at the Golden Globes recently.
Yeah.
And now everyone has decided they should get back together. Like, what? I feel gross about this conversation.
People have been thirsty for that for so long. And I just, don't we want better things for Jennifer Aniston?
Don't we? This man has done nothing but talk about how awful he has been recently.
And how bad he is at marriage and how terrible he hates and, how much he doesn't like being married. He joked, even though he was, accused of hitting his son, in a drunken stupor in his, divorce from Angelina Jolie. And, there's, documentation about it. He made just a bunch of jokes in that room. I watched that speech, and I didn't watch the whole Globes. I never do. But I watched that speech, and I was so mad.
Oh, no, I guess it was the Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, Screen Actors Guild,
right,
sorry.
Yes.
So I watched that speech, and I was just so mad, and I just was like, yeah, you know what? Honestly, this room is
literally, it's just
horrible.
The same thing over and over and over again, just this forgiveness of this horrible man's issues, and let's just get them back together. I feel so, awful. I feel awful if I'm complicit because of my constant clicking on the Daily Mail just for a quick update on something. Maybe then it's on me.
Well, I think there's how I feel about Lainey Gossip. I think she does a really great job.
She does.
She had actually a really wonderful long rant about that particular and what that photo means and what people are doing and why. And it does mean nothing.
Yes.
But it's she likes to do a thing of photo assumption. The other thing that I have finally gotten into, because that I don't participate much in the reality television gossip world or the YouTube gossip world and stuff like that. Those don't mean much to me. I finally started listening to the podcast Who Weekly. Have you ever listened to it?
Who's the host?
It's Bobby Finger.
Yes, I have.
Who used to be Jezebel.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he used to be the gossip columnist for Jezebel. Anyway, Who Weekly is actually it's a fun way to digest that nonsense and not have to click on anything, because they will read you Daily Mail headlines and make fun of them.
They're 5 paragraphs long.
Yeah, that's one of their fun. Sometimes what they do, I've only been listening to it for a little bit. They also have they have 2 episodes weekly. One's a call-in show where they answer your Who questions. Basically, it's they tackle the non-famous famous people. They're just
the D-list folk.
Yeah, who?
Yeah.
That's what the point of the podcast is. It's
See, I never
kind of
asked that
amazing.
though. So I mean, I'd listen.
I think you might enjoy it.
Oh no, I have.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Okay,
and I
yes.
did, and I did really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's just that I feel up to speed.
You are up to speed in a way that I'm not. So yeah.
Yeah. So perhaps there were some revelations there for you.
Well, more so, I just was like, how do I don't care about any of these people, but the way that they analyze.
It's all connected.
Well, the way that they analyze media consumption
Yes.
and celebrity is
Yes.
what I'm there for.
Yeah.
I don't actually care about the people they're talking about. I just think it's interesting.
They're real people.
But like, why do you think people like are so obsessed with Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston? Out of all the celebrities that have been around since the 90s, like why are these two the ones that everybody is?
I don't.
What's his,
Do you think it's because they looked the most alike when they were dating? Like he grew his hair into her haircut.
Well, they were very. Well, he does that for everyone. You've seen
I know,
those
I've
pictures,
seen that.
right?
But like, do you remember? I remember the iconic photo. Oh, actually, one of the things I think maybe it is because an A-list TV person crossed into an A-list film person, and that was the great merging of these like two very separate media back in the day.
I forget what I was. Oh, you're talking about Brad being a film person.
Yeah, and Jennifer.
But I was
TV.
watching a TV show recently where they were kind of debating whether Jennifer Aniston had made the leap from being a TV star to a film star.
At that point?
No, now.
Oh, now.
Would you consider her a movie star?
like streaming has made that murky, right? Like Netflix has, you know what I mean? Like
I think
because Adam Sandler's so much on, and that's who she tends to make movies with, right?
I think she's like kind of like a failed movie star because I don't think she's ever been able to carry a film or open a film.
What?
Think about it, honestly. Has she made a better film than like that one that she did with Paul Rudd, where she's like?
No, there was the one she got
she
got big nominations for, that Plane Girl or whatever it was called.
The Plane Girl. Oh, I mean that was she's
just playing a plane
She
girl.
played like a maid who stole or something like that.
No, she was just like a cashier, and she fell in love with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh yeah, I remember that. But I mean, that's not
we can't name.
We can't name it. That's the thing.
Jennifer
Like she's,
Aniston?
I think she's a failed movie star.
Wow.
But I think she's like
A-list.
a super A. She's
Yes.
still A-list, but I think she's a failed movie star and a super A-list TV star. That's my estimation of her.
Well, yeah, that's because she's the most famous TV star. But
It's a lot to digest for me. Because I heard she also, I don't know if it's true, but I heard that Gal Gadot's going to be the spokesperson for Smart Water now.
Yeah, I heard that she got, but she was doing that for like 15 years. She's,
you know what? I think it's time for Gal.
And I think Jennifer Aniston's fine.
I think she is.
She spends all her time in Cabo. She's got a collection of.
No, I don't think we have.
But also, still, I'm just shocked at how relevant they are to people who follow celebrity news, because when she joined Instagram, which was only a few months ago, she was the fastest person to get to 1 million followers or something like that.
She is so popular. Lainey has a lot of great analysis
I
about
think she
why
managed,
Jennifer Aniston
I think
is so
we
popular.
still have a lot of nostalgia for Friends, for better, for worse.
Yeah.
I think we've been learning a lot for worse over the years. And
young people love Friends.
And they do love Friends. It's a comfy show in our dark times. Next to The Office, that's like I think the two most popular, and Seinfeld maybe have streaming shows.
But like
or something.
for young people, like
they
Friends and The Office are like the two most popular.
They love it, and I also think she has managed to not do anything really terrible. Like no scandals.
Yeah, she hasn't had any scandals.
Even the ones that she did have were more like things that like Brad left her, and I guess. There was the murkiness of the Justin Theroux with someone else beforehand, but it's not.
Well, like the way she gets sort of pitched in the media and written about in the media, and sort of like her being someone who is dumped is very fetishized by specific writers in different tabloids.
Yeah.
And the idea that like
she's just like us.
Millions of women are just like Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, and she's always maintained a ridiculously consistent style.
Mm-hmm.
Same hair color, same look, same bronzed face, the same kind of simple wardrobe.
Yeah, you'd think that tan's going to catch up at some point. It hasn't yet.
But they always compare her situation with Debbie Reynolds.
Yep.
Eddie Fisher.
And Elizabeth Taylor.
And Elizabeth Taylor.
Totally. All the time.
Except there's not that awesome picture that they have. That you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's not that awesome picture. Yeah,
you know which one?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, this is where Liz is sitting on Eddie's lap and Richard Burton's leaning on the chair because they were making Cleopatra. Are there any, was like Jen visiting the set?
If so, those photos have never seen the light of day. Well, that's the thing. She's very accessible.
Jen. I know.
Very accessible.
That's what I think it is about her, too. There's an accessibility. And also, she sort of does enough press that she's not secretive. She's not, like, in hiding. But we really don't know very much about her. Honestly, we don't.
Plus, I think she actually was pretty good on Friends. It's Jen. How can we help it? You're listening to Pop This. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
And joining us today is our very special guest, our esteemed and fantastic producer, Andrea Gin.
Yay. Hi.
How many times?
Pop This lipstick maker.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Lipstick maker.
Keep adding all your many professions there.
We actually have kind of kept that on the down low. We haven't talked about that yet, but Andrea Gin, like as part of our sort of like Christmas presents, made us a Pop This lipstick this year, and it looks so good.
It is really nice.
So
it's always
great.
It's always in my bag.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I usually carry it in my pockets all the time, and today I don't have it for some reason, but I wear it all the time. And I get so many compliments on it.
I do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and now I'm gonna make them for guests. That
I know. Even like if you are a guest who doesn't wear lipstick, too bad. Now you're gonna wear this lipstick.
And we'll do in the photo we do at the end. We will put you in that.
Everyone
lipstick.
has to put on their lipstick before they take a photo. They're so beautiful. And
it is. I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. Normally we'd read a bio of our guest, but you know what? You're like the third part of this podcast,
exactly.
so I'm just always so thrilled when we get you to come on and talk.
And I don't do anything else but produce this podcast. So
Never, ever. You have no other job.
Yeah, it's my whole life.
And often when we come and say, "What did you think of that?" and then I say, "Did you watch it?" and you go, "No." So this is fun. So it's fun to know that you watched. And sometimes you're just looking like, no, like very certain, like, no.
You got to curate.
Yeah, no, you're a busy woman. You're making lipsticks. Content. I mean, you don't have that much time, right? Yeah, but you did make an exception for.
Well, I had watched this in like 1995, so.
Yeah.
It's your coming of age film.
This is you.
I'm so excited.
It didn't require
this is
extra
us.
work.
This is them.
Double happiness.
Double happiness.
We've been talking about doing this film for years.
We were going to do it last year because it was the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, but we screw up anniversaries all the time.
So now it's the 26th?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're celebrating the 26th anniversary.
So it came out in 94.
Just as important.
94.
Absolutely just as important. Yes, 94. Yeah.
It's still
honestly,
great.
No, but
timeless classic.
I probably saw it in 95. I don't think I saw it right away.
Yes.
Okay.
And also,
it's Chinese New Year, bitches.
There you go.
Let's do it. Double happiness is 1994.
I hope you can add some fireworks sounds when you're working on this.
I hope that becomes your ringtone.
Yes, exactly.
Double Happiness is a 1994 Canadian drama film directed by Mina Shum, co-produced by the National Film Board of Canada. The film stars Sandra Oh, hero to the podcast, as Jade Lee, an actress struggling to assert her independence from the expectations of her Chinese-Canadian family. Caleb Keith Rennie also stars as Mark, Jade's love interest. This is Sandra Oh's breakout performance in a lead role. She won a Genie Award for Best Performance by an Actress in a Leading Role for the film. It's also semi-autobiographical because it's Mina Shum, sort of an adaptation of her life story, who's the first Chinese-Canadian woman to direct a feature film with a wide release. Long live Mina Shum.
Yeah. I thought it was more autobiographical. I know it was semi. I wonder, do you know where all the lapses of the changes are from her life?
No. I mean, I do know from reading her bio that she did leave home at 18, and I think she did want to become an actor, and went for.
Well, she was acting in this movie. She gave herself a part.
So great. Those parts are accurate.
Yeah, this I remember seeing this film when it came out. But probably 95 or something as well. But when I went to watch it again, I was impressed with how great it was.
It's fantastic.
Like it didn't feel like, whoa, dated.
Yeah.
It really felt like relevant.
Yeah. And I mean, in kind of a depressing way in some ways too, because she had so much success with this film, and it's a mostly Asian cast of actors, and she's telling her story, and like, why does this kind of stand alone as a film? Like, why wasn't there like a flood of other Chinese Canadian female filmmakers stepping forward and getting a chance to direct films or write stories or
get cast in films,
get cast in things?
Yeah.
Because I was just talking to Andrea about a previous guest on our show, Flo.
Yeah, Florence G, who was like a guest when we were talking about
maybe I'll be your baby. Always be my maybe.
Always be my maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who's one of my best friends, and she grew up and tried to act in Vancouver and ran into a lot of roadblocks that are very, very much in keeping with the ones that Mina Shum and Jade encountered. And that was also like in sort of 97 to 2002-ish kind of time frame, 2003. Like that was sort of peak around that time. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you saw it, how much of this film were you relating to as well as just watching it as, happy to see Chinese Canadian, cinema?
It was like seeing somebody like me go to the moon or something, like in this fact that she told this story in such a bold and honest way, and like it's her first film and she shot everything and she wrote it, and it was incredible. And to be so brave to talk about your family like that and tell the story, and she got so much acclaim and success from this film as well. It was just astounding. It's
such a balanced film. I forget about that too, because and I did read an interview with her where she said if she'd made the film when she was younger, she probably would have made the dad less kind. And now when she got older, she was able to be more thoughtful around her dad was really just trying to help her, and so she could make him a more rounded person.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a way, I think, like you think of your parents as kind of an oppressive force in your life when you're growing up. And then for me anyway, as I came into adulthood, I began to appreciate more, their position on things and why they thought things and, like why they did what they did. And I felt I've grown into sort of understanding more about my parents. And I'm sure that it is true. Like if I had written a story about my parents when I was a teenager, it would have been how like, strict and mean they were and all of that. But now I think, as you grow into an adult, I think you have a more well-rounded idea of like where they're coming from and why they do things.
And I think like what I really liked about this movie is that like I understand, like I think I understand. I mean, at the very least, I'm empathetic to the father's desire to, he came to Canada with this sort of like, but he had all these other dreams, and I think juxtaposing him against the uncle, and like showing sort of like this different relationship and this different possibility and this different life, like I really loved actually like sort of, I mean, you can see this sort of strictness and the disappointment and how he's holding tight to what his hopes are for his children. He's already fully estranged from his son, which is a pretty significant, situation to be in. And I know that like I grew up in Southeast Vancouver, and so I had like a lot of friends who sort of like had similar sort of like cultural expectations around them about like what they were going to do with their lives and who they were going to interact with. And I mean, Flo's story is her own, but like her parents were certainly not happy at first with her bringing home Tom, who would eventually become her husband. Like it was not great for a number of years. And then what ended up happening is that like her dad, who had like the biggest objection to Tom, ended up loving Tom the most. But it took lots of threats, lots of years of secrecy. Like we were responsible for like helping them hide their relationship through all of grade 10 through grade 12 and then well into university. And that was like our Friday night was like making sure that like they could hang out and date and see each other and get her home. Like I was barely acceptable, but I managed to sort of skate through. Tom was not.
How did her parents react to her being an actor?
I mean, I don't think they were thrilled about any of that either. It was because, I mean, she grew up like she had to play piano and she had to like get, and she had to like achieve a certain sort of grade level, and like the acting was really just for her. That was her chance to just be like, no, I'm going to do this on my own. And I mean, I might be misspeaking here, but I'm pretty sure she paid for all her acting lessons by herself. Like she really was like earning her own money and doing her own thing and still going to school and going to university and stuff like that. Like even deciding to pursue communications and research was like originally she was supposed to do computer programming, and that's so there was lots of different sort of like things that were happening that were just really like echo in this film.
For anyone who hasn't, should we just do a quick plot synopsis?
Oh, sorry, we skipped all over that.
We did. And we should also mention
now like
too,
45 minutes into the podcast.
But we should also mention that it's on Gem, which is the CBC streaming service. So
you can watch it for free.
And with a lot of commercials, but
there were a lot of commercials, but I was appreciative of being able to watch it.
Yeah, and no, I was too, and I just thought it was nice to let everyone know you can easily watch this, because sometimes we've chosen we're not going to do something even though we would like to because it's too hard to see.
Yeah, if you're in Canada, you're fine, and probably you can also stream it through the NFB or rent it through iTunes. Yeah,
exactly. So, all right, so Jade is an independent 22-year-old Chinese-Canadian struggling to live the life she wants while not disappointing her traditional Chinese parents. In an effort to encourage their daughter to start a family, Jane's parents set her up on a series of dates with nice traditional Chinese boys, but Jade is not interested. And sometimes neither are the Chinese boys. When she meets a Caucasian grad student named Mark, Callum Keith Rennie, she has to decide how much her happiness is worth. Her own happiness, is worth.
Yeah. Can I just say, like, Sandra Oh is so great in this movie. And, like, to be that great in your first feature film role, and as we've talked about with like Killing Eve, to continue that level of excellence your entire career. Like, she's never turned in a bad performance. She has only elevated stuff that she, like, remember Under the Tuscan Sun?
Yes.
Not a great movie. She's fantastic in it.
But I think that's why when she showed up on Grey's Anatomy,
oh God,
when I started watching that, I was so thrilled because I already knew already who she was. And I think all Canadians knew already who she was. So it was like, okay, here we go. This is it. Show us your stuff. And she has.
Oh, she's so good.
Yeah.
She's so good.
It's not a simple, this is a super easy situation. These are bad people and this is the good way. And of course, everyone should get to follow their dreams. And watching her struggle and her face constantly, even before she just breaks down crying at the end at the dinner table. Lots of spoilers here. And the big run, which we talked about when she just kind of is so fed up. Even then, just all of it's not even just about not worrying about not pleasing them. She loves them very, very, very much. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that comes through. And I think that's what makes this film so hard.
Yeah, I think it's very nuanced.
Yes.
Well, what I was thinking about is how there's several scenes where she's acting and she, does.
I love those.
Yeah, the Blanche
so
Dubois character and all of that.
Joan of Arc.
And it's kind of like the idea is that it's just like she's trying to do these parts that she'll never get cast as. But, I mean, when you think about her career today in Killing Eve, she's playing a character whose name is Eve Polastri.
Yeah.
And so, like, that when the person wrote the script, they weren't necessarily writing it for
Sandra
Oh, or, it wasn't necessarily like they were looking to cast somebody who was an Eve Polastri, and they cast Sandra Oh. And to me, that is a massive breakthrough. Sandra Oh can audition for roles that are written just as people and potentially get the role. Whereas before it was like, no, they would never cast you. This is obviously a Caucasian person.
I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the film is when she's in front of that casting director and she's just auditioning for like a waitress role. And he's like, can you do an accent? And she busts out this like flawless French accent. I thought the treatment of that particular moment was brilliant on her part. And then obviously she knows what he's asking for, but she's like, the way it's scripted, she's making it uncomfortable so that he understands he's racist. And I really appreciated that. Like, I thought,
well, it's a good thing all that's changed.
Oh my God. Well,
I was going to say, that's what felt like, as you're pointing out, that, she is now in killing Eve, but this movie's 25 years old.
Mm-hmm. And even just, like, so this is a weird thing, but it's related. Carlos and I were watching, he found this, like, channel on YouTube that collects all the different years and nights of television show credits. So, like, you can see what was on Monday nights on all the channels in 1988. And it's weirdly compelling to watch because there are shows that you've never heard of, and there are shows that you obviously knew very well, and things that, like, live in your muscle memory in a way that, like, why would I know instinctively that this is the theme song for Dallas, a show I never watched, but that lives in my brain. Anyway, so all of this to say, we were watching, I think it was like 85 or 86, I can't remember. It was a Saturday night, and there were actual television shows with, like, Asian Americans, Asian Canadians in lead roles on TV, more in the proposed fall schedule of 85 or 86 than exist on television in 2020.
Yeah.
And I just, like, both of us, like, looked at each other and were like, how are these, like, small pockets of, like, you know, like, intentional casting beyond whiteness then eclipsed by, like, decades and decades? And obviously we know why. It's racism, white spirit.
I think we've been living through 10 years of doubling down is kind of
doubling down on the racism.
Yeah, just like there was like maybe some efforts to fix some things, and then just we're going extra hard on that.
Yeah, it's just still so many, like, white people in power that are, like, doing the, I don't know, flex of just casting. Anyway.
Yeah.
I thought this is still a conversation that is happening 25 years later. Yeah. I would like us not to be then saying this is a conversation that's still happening 35 years later.
The other thing I think that was really great about those little cutaways of her doing these monologues too was also reminding us of how much acting she's doing in her own life. Like having to pretend to go out on these dates with these men and pretend to them that, I'd like to take some business classes. That sounds super great. And how they're treating her as if this acting thing is just like a little passing hobby until you get, to the real life you're going to have. So her entire life, except for when she's not at home, is an act. But then there's also this beautiful part where she's very close to her mom and her sister, and she's actually really close to her father as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm really happy that she chose to, put some of those fun moments in where they were dancing and singing karaoke, just to give you a sense of how this is like a really beautiful place. Like, but Dad's really, really gotta learn some things about the patriarchy. And then I didn't really know what to do with, and it would be great if Mina was here, but just that scene of the mother talking about the little girl that had been drowned.
Oh yeah, how she
there was a woman who wouldn't speak.
Well, who couldn't speak, who was mute, and she...
Well, no, she was mute because they killed her daughter. She never spoke again, they said. It just hung there, and it made me go, so what do we do with that? Like, she has experienced this before, and now she's allowing all of her children to disappear. Will she eventually find herself quiet? I didn't know what to do with that.
I think
except for it broke my heart. But
I think it's meant to, like, sort of be a sort of like a commentary on what's happening and how she's trying to resist it. Like, she calls her son still secretly. Yes.
But then and that was a great scene too. Who's the girl he's talking to? It was a Chinese woman who you know what I mean? Like, she was wrong.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many layers going on there.
I know, that's what I mean. That was so fascinating.
Yeah. I feel like the movie could easily be like an extra half an hour long, and I wouldn't be mad at that. You know?
Yeah. But for that scene when she's telling the story about the drowning, I felt it was more about, and she kind of says this like literally, but it was about, like, when people lose a child through a death or something immediate like that, it's like, it's known tragedy and people recognize it, and it's like, it happens but like when children just slowly leave you and you raise them and nothing, like that's just as bad, because like you're going to be a person without children.
Yeah, but she's dealing with an extra layer where she's not even allowed to talk to her. Like she's secretly phoning. Like she can't have a relationship.
Yeah, and so she's talking about like, is she, even though like, she's raised her children. Her children, she has children. They didn't die in childbirth. Like she's been a mother, but like, is she in a better position than this woman who lost her kids early? Is she in a better position because she's just going to end up not really having a relationship with her children potentially, because they're all
that's what she is now. Like this is where her
like that's
life
what she's
headed.
Worried about.
Yes, yeah, but it was such a I mean, but she doesn't feel any sense of being able to stop it.
Yeah.
And that's what was...
The helplessness of it is...
The helplessness of
exactly.
it. Yeah, that unless I change your father, he won't change. So that's that.
But I did like how, like, there's this small thing. Like, I mean, that's the initial change is really hard to, like, ask people to sort of, like, confront some of their assumptions and confront some of their fears. And there's a lot of, I think, legitimate fears in, like, your kids being with people who... represent this other life that you think, perhaps lacks morals or lacks values or like can't understand and will ask your children to change and stuff, And I think like when she says at the end to her mom, like, maybe we can try and like get him to change a little bit, like that's a thing that I think a lot of folks maybe in the moment of something really big happening and your parents having to sort of reckon with you, choosing a life that they don't want for you, you can't see like down the road, which is often like maybe 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years, is that like most people do come around eventually.
Well, I mean, this is an area I don't like. That's such cultural conversation, right? For me, growing up, and having kids, my philosophy is that. Persian poet Khalil Gibran, which he said, your children don't come from you, they come through you. And I have the sense that they're going to go off and I don't know what they're going to do, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't feel ownership to them. Like, I don't feel that. I feel a sense of, well, this is cool, like throwing the dice, I'm just like, see what happens. I've done my part. I hope they, I hope I don't end up where I never see them again, but it's very much let's just see. So I don't understand the expectation that I mean, to be fair, I hope if I'm like dying that they'll come take care of me. That's there. But I mean, but I don't have that cultural sense of the ownership of children and what they owe you. I don't have that.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like immigrant families it's slightly different, maybe because you feel like you've moved here to give your children a better life. And you kind of expect them to stay here because this is a better place than anywhere else there is to live. And I think them moving away to somewhere else is seen as... But they
didn't move away somewhere else. They were just going to move down the street.
I'm just speaking about immigrant families in general and why they want to keep their families in close proximity.
Well, I think you have like my grandparents were immigrants, and we only had the 4 of us. That was it. Mm-hmm. So you tend to glom on to that because there's no extended family. There are no aunts and uncles. There's nothing out there like that. Like you have to be in that group setting, and then they go off and do stupid things, which my dad and uncle did. So, but it's so hard because it's such a different reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think. As people kind of live in Canada longer, like I know my parents came to sort of, like you said, like just come around and like assimilate into like not having this kind of rigid way of thinking that, comes from the old country where it's like you have children so they can take care of you when you're old, and then they have to have children and keep this chain going forever and ever because they can see like around them in the culture like that's not what... Canadians, that's not the thinking of Canadians, and
it's not the like, same like multi-generational like family sort of like you're less likely to have like 4 or 5 generations living in like the same house or the same like block even. Like I think, and I do think that there is something like really beautiful about the idea that like people see like not just family within like sort of the bloodline, but community too. You know, like I think there's something super interesting that like my family, I don't think has, like we don't have that same sense of I don't know, just like that same sense of like honoring each other. That's not part of the conversation in my family.
But at the same time, like you have such a close relationship with your grandmother.
So close.
And you're basically like you are caring for her in her old age, and so is your sister.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's just kind of what Chinese parents are, you know, hoping for. Actually, is to have someone like you and your sister.
I would be a godsend to Chinese parents then.
Yeah, you would be actually.
Yeah, I do love hanging out with my grandma so much. So yeah, that's. I mean, thank you. I take that.
Well, I think though that. I mean, the trick of all that is like you just said, I like my grandma, and I think the trick of the whole family thing is you're still doing it when you don't like them. That's
you know what? Solid point. I choose to think of her as like one of my best friends. That's true. That's
and the hardest thing about all of this is when someone like it is hard, right? And you don't get on super well. And I mean, I'm a hopeful person, so at the end of the film, I had a sense that. Like we did leave, that maybe we can work on your dad. I don't know. I mean, there's poor little Pearl just all alone there in the house.
That kid is so talented. That actress is so talented.
She knew to be afraid. Like, don't do this. And even though she was, don't worry about it.
She's super smart.
She knew that would happen. So she's all alone in this situation now. So now I mean, you know, if there was a sequel to this, poor Jade would have to feel the responsibility of what they've stuck with Pearl with, right? Like that's it now. Pearl's it. Like everything's on her. The last hope. Like they will never let her out. Like they made the mistake.
I'm sure she became a brain surgeon.
Yeah, I think
maybe she was okay with you know what I mean? Like maybe she was that third kid that was like, that stuff is too much for me.
Yeah,
I'm good. Plus, she had a boyfriend at school who was Chinese, right? And she was
the boy she liked,
right?
Like, yeah. She probably became like a doctor and married a Chinese boy and. Like she's probably like the perfect daughter.
She probably was just for the sake of like I am done. Like this has been so much angst in this family.
Okay, so now I want the dish. So, did your parents object to Joe?
No, actually. Disappointingly, I don't have a good story about that. I think because you know we grew up in Tsawwassen, which is a suburb of Vancouver, and it's a very at least when I was growing up there, very white suburb. Like there's like 3 Asian kids in my entire school. And so I think that they just kind of resigned themselves pretty early that just numbers wise, like I was never gonna really meet it. Like, I don't know how many Chinese boys I would be able to meet, really. Like
I think I met like a million times more than
like
you.
Exactly. You lived in East Van, so it would have been a different story. But...
White Rock, no.
Yeah.
So don't be hanging out there trying to
Yeah. So you know, Joe he's a very charming, nice person, and they just immediately liked him.
He's exactly the guy you want to bring home to your parents. He is. He could teach lessons in this. Here's what you wear. Here's what you do. No, he's the right guy.
Obviously we really like Joe. But I thought Caleb Keith Rennie did a pretty good job in this film. Like he's not really like essential at all, but I really liked the chemistry he had with Sandra Oh, and I thought like he did the right thing, which is that he gets out of the way and he's still like a compelling sexual partner for this woman.
It was just very sad because, you know, I think she did a good job of that, just that he was a really good person, really kind and thoughtful and respectful of her, and in a perfect world should be able to say, Dad, this is exactly what you should hope for me. To meet someone who cares about me, and you know, and is all the things that a person should have in a partner.
And apparently has his own loft in Vancouver. So mid-90s.
I hope he hung on.
Mid-90s real estate. Pretty good.
Let's remember, this is actually 80s lived through.
That's
filmed in the 90s. So
isn't it set in 90s or
it is at 94? But I mean, she
yeah.
would have been. This would have been her.
Well, I mean, in terms of flashing back on her existence, sure,
Yes.
but like
The part I thought was extra funny was when she at first pretended she didn't speak English when they first met.
It was the best.
Because I never thought about doing that or realized I could do that until I was like an adult. And I've only deployed it like a few times in my life, like on the bus or whatever.
I love it.
But it's amazing when you realize that you can just pretend you don't speak English to
and
avoid
then you can hear people say things too.
Avoid an interaction with somebody.
Wow.
So
that's great.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's an amazing.
Honestly, like that's at least
thing that was open to me that I didn't think about.
It's like one flex against racism. Like that's great. Like that's honestly like a gift.
It is.
Yeah.
But there was I also liked, just because I really loved seeing Vancouver that way. I liked the fact that it was very, very centered, very small world. Like it really centered on exactly where she
Vancouver.
was.
It's so Vancouver.
So that East Vancouver too, right?
Yeah.
When the car kept going along that dirt path behind the house.
Yep.
And just all the working parts of the city.
But their backyard garden is such a Chinese family
garden.
With
all the digging and
like growing. Because back in the 80s and before, like it was very hard to get Chinese vegetables in Vancouver. So a lot of people just grew their own in their backyard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so like every Chinese family is familiar with their grandma growing all kinds of vegetables and having like those raised boxes and
the tin foil behind the stove.
Yes, that was the thing too.
I think she did a really nice job of making sure that this was that felt like the actual experience of the tea being made and bringing home the food and I love that opening scene too of the table, the Lazy Susan in the middle.
That was an amazing shot.
That was so funny. That was so perfect. Like I really, I mean, to lean in to say this was my world, this is my culture. Like you said, that's why it felt so important to you that there wasn't it wasn't sort of a backstory. This was my life.
She nailed it.
Yeah.
It was like, that's like what my grandma's house looked like. And like every detail of this movie is exactly like Chinese Canadian. Like it's so authentic. It's crazy.
I wish that we talk a lot about directors and their muses, and we spend too much time wasting our breath on like Quentin Tarantino. But like talking about Mina Shum and Sandra Oh as her muse, like because Sandra's been in like all of her she was most of her like feature films.
She was in Meditation Park as well.
But she was also in the oh my gosh, it's the one she made like after Double Happiness.
Drive, she said?
No, not Drive, she said, but the other one. And there's like a little girl in it, and like Sandra Oh plays her mom. I was just looking at it before we came here, and I watched the trailer. Anyways, it's...
Yeah, but when she made Meditation Park, there was a lot of talk about, like around that movie, about how Sandra Oh is like, her muse. Okay. And I think I
want to have like that be part of a permanent conversation forever.
Whose muse? Who?
Like Sandra Oh as part of like Mina Shum's muse.
Okay.
I read that she wrote her second film, Drive, she said, with Sandra Oh in mind in the starring role, but it didn't work out because Sandra had other.
I guess Moira Kelly.
Yeah, Moira Kelly ended up being the star of that film, but yeah, when she was writing it, she was thinking about Sandra Oh.
Yeah. I just love like those kinds of friendships and those like how those like artistic relationships feed each other. And I think we just spend so much time on like male directors and their like female muses. I'm so much more interested in the art that can be made between two women.
I know. And if we had a lot of women filmmakers to talk about who make a lot of movies, we could do that. But that's the issue.
But you know what? There probably are more. Like, I mean, I think
there are more. We can find more.
I think we can. Yeah. Like even just on this year, or in the last like 6 months on the podcast, like we had never done Agnes Varda before, and we finally did like the Cleo film. We've been meaning to do this for like ever and ever and ever. Like, I think that I will say I am complicit in my own problem, and I think I can help fix it.
Well, there we go. And Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, 2 Wonder Woman movies. I don't know what else could come up later.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, you're right. I mean, it's an effort. You have to make an effort to talk about women in film because it's not it's just not as easy. It's not right in front of you all the time.
Yeah, it's just like not always visible.
Well, and like Greta Gerwig putting Saoirse Ronan in her films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's becoming
That's definitely becoming a thing. For sure. That's absolutely becoming a thing. Yeah, I'm excited about this. So confession.
Yeah.
And this is confession as a bad Vancouverite. I had never seen Double Happiness until I watched it for this.
I'm still reeling from learning that information.
And it's embarrassing.
Wow.
It's embarrassing. But you know what? It's never too late. You can correct
No,
this
and I always like how we
mistake.
say it's a safe space, but we're not telling the truth.
No, you're judging me hard.
Yeah,
Because
it's not a safe space.
Wow.
for
The looks
that
on
piece
both
of
your
information.
faces is just scathing, which is fine. But like, I love this movie so much, and I'm so sad that I waited so long to watch it, and I'm so grateful that we did.
Well, I'm really happy that we do have the way to watch it too, and so we can tell everyone if you want, if what we've talked about has intrigued you, it's right at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Thank you, NFB.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and when our NFB is working on all cylinders, that's what it makes. And I do love that movie. And again, I also want to tell everyone that I think that there's something about saying someone that's 26 years old, it feels like it could be right now. And for reasons that sometimes are sad, as you said, not a lot has changed, but it has a real feel to it, right down to the soundtrack, like with the shadowy men. Boy, if you're a Kids in the Hall fan, that's all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, what am I?
It's also just a great story.
It is a great story, but it
performances.
feels and it looks good. I just like the whole sense of it. I like the world I'm in for a little while. I just think it's a consistently, you're not like going, oof, ever.
Yeah, and I found like the humor and the writing aren't dated. Like,
No.
it's still funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I think because it's not a movie that's predicated on cruel humor. It's just a movie that's like about like honestly funny things. And honestly funny things don't ever age. Like they're always funny.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of like the major successes of this movie.
Yeah, I agree. And to our eternal question.
Does it pop? Yes.
Yes. All the
it
pops.
All the
Yeah.
pops. It's going to just keep popping forever.
Yeah, I love this movie so much.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy it's here, and I'm happy we got to do it again.
Yeah.
Or do it
for the first time
for the
for
first
me.
time. Yeah.
I know. It's a
Wow.
shame. I know. It's
Going to write you down on our shame book. The
shame
book of shame.
book. Can you imagine if we start keeping a book of shame for every weird
We just say like Game
confession
of
I
Thrones
have?
to you. Shame, shame,
What
shame.
a nightmare I'm in for. We love to leave our episodes on something we recommend. So Andrea Gin, as our producer and our guest, would you like to go first?
Yes, I think you know what I'm going to recommend because I've been talking about it all week.
Uh-huh.
But I started watching Cheer on Netflix last weekend, and it's become my favorite obsession. I'm looking up all the kids on their Instagram to see what they're up to now. And it's just, I just love that show. Like
I am very excited to dip in, as you can imagine, because of my nieces are both in Cheer and have been for, well, gosh, since they were really little.
Yeah.
And so this is a world I have spent some time in at different meets and seeing them how they love it. Like it is something they love so much.
Yeah, and I mean it's essentially a straight ahead, talking head documentary. There's nothing groundbreaking about that, but it's just the story of these kids and their coach, and you just get drawn in and you just like fall in love with them.
It's like a Friday Night Lights for a new generation.
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I
Yeah,
haven't
me
watched
too.
it yet, but I can't wait.
Yeah, agreed.
Lisa?
So it is the season of the blues, kind of January, and if you're having some, little issues and stuff, there's a really wonderful podcast I listen to occasionally called 10% Happier with Dan Harris. Does anyone know it?
I don't know it.
A really interesting backstory. So Dan Harris is an ABC journalist, TV reporter, and in the middle of one of his news reads, he had a panic attack. Mm-hmm. And you can watch it. I've watched the video. And it sent him, it was like Diane Sawyer threw to him.
Oh, wow.
And he threw right back to her.
Oh.
And everyone made the face like, oh, okay. I guess that's what we're doing now here.
Yeah.
Dan's gonna do this now. And you can see him. And then he went off on a journey to try and figure out what he had done wrong. He thought he had reached a certain height. But anyway, it's a lot about meditation, interviewing different people on meditation. And yeah, if you think it's going to cure everything, it won't, but you can become 10% happier.
That's nice.
And that's not a bad goal. Anyway, it's been around for a while, but it might be helpful to some people if there are some, seasonal struggles or something else. I always find it very practical and helpful.
That's great. And I like a modest goal of 10%. I like things that are quantifiable.
Yeah, exactly.
And
10%.
I'm really into numbers sometimes. I am going to recommend the film Pain and Glory. It's the new movie by Pedro Almodovar, starring Antonio Banderas, and it's basically like Pedro Almodovar's like story of himself, and Antonio Banderas plays him, and it's certainly like it grapples a lot with drug use and specifically heroin and pain and
glory.
Truly, like physical pain, like sort of and mental anguish and panic and depression and things like that. But it also talks a lot about like art and what it means to sort of make films and what it means to sort of let people down and be let down and stuff like that. Anyway, Antonio Banderas, like, it's a truly flawless performance. He is fantastic in it. And also there is, this is not a... If you don't know that Pedro Almodovar is gay in his real life, then cool news for you. When Antonio Banderas gets to have what can only be described as one of the hottest kisses I've ever seen between anybody in the world, when he sort of reconnects with someone. And it's great. And
I think you buried the lead there.
I just, man, I did not know that what I needed to carry on my last and celebrate my last week of Horny 40 was...
Oh no, is it over?
Well, I'm going to try and carry on the Horny 40 into 41. I think 41.
You should just keep it going.
I want to try, guys.
I thought you meant the whole 40s.
I want to try, so I'm going to do what I can. But yeah, I did not know. And I want same-sex kisses for Antonio Banderas for the rest of my life.
Oh.
Sorry, Melanie.
Oh, she's been out for a long time.
Are they divorced?
Yeah.
I thought they were together
for
still.
Like 10, 15 years.
Really? Yeah. All right.
Well, now we've come full circle to talking about celebrity gossip.
All right, fine. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Andrea Gin, for being our excellent guest.
Thank you.
Happy Chinese New Year. Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Year of the Rat.
Celebrate. Yeah. Oh, rats terrify me, so I'm not.
I have a rat terrier, so
I'm terrified for the whole
year.
year.
Are you not afraid of Rudy?
I'm not afraid of Rudy. No. He's doing the Lord's work.
You're Year of the Horse.
Year of the Horse.
I'm Year of the Ox. What are you?
Dragon.
What a wild team this is.
Yeah.
Wow. And actually, all of it really checks out. I just want to say, like, I did spend like a good several years reading everything I could about Chinese astrology because that's part of my past. And all of those signs really check out for all of us.
That should be a whole other podcast.
I'm super excited about it. Also, because I also know your Western signs as well. So interesting. Anyways.
Things all of a sudden got really cryptic and weird there.
I love it. Look, I'm just saying, when you've got a Virgo ox, there's...
I knew you were going there.
I know. Anyway, it all checks out. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Joe, for
manning the what's it? The ones and twos?
The
Is
board.
That what it's called? The board.
Running the board.
Running the
wheels of steel.
Good work, Joe, keeping us on track.
And for making our Andrea very happy.
Yeah.
It all worked out.
It all worked out for all of us. We're great. You can rate and review us 5 stars on iTunes, and Stitcher, and anywhere else you want.
And Andrea Gin is our star and our producer, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.